It is now 10:45, so we've reached the scheduled time. Therefore, I call to order the Bills Committee on Fugitive Offenders and Mutual Legal Assistance in Criminal Matters Legislation Amendment Bill 2019. Let me deal with some housekeeping matters. Since the last meeting, we have a few papers. Some have been tabled. In any event, all of them have been issued to you. So please check if you have got them. If not, please check with the Secretariat. First of all, a notice issued by the Secretary General explaining about the consideration and details of the first meeting, CB-2 1261/18 to 19. So that's the first paper. As to the second one, I think you have received from Dr. Jiang Chongtai, issued to the Bills Committee, CB-2 1306/18 to 19/01. Generally speaking, he was saying that he would like to ask the candidates running for the post of chairman and deputy chairman to give a detailed account about their position, their personal interests, etc. And then we've got a third paper. Do I see a serial number? Well, I just want to tell members what we have received. So this one is easier, and I don't think it should be dealt with at this moment. But since we have already got a paper, so I just want to inform you that Ms. Claudia Mo wrote in her letter that after electing the chair, there should be a public hearing. I'll leave it to the chairman to be elected. CB-2 1306/18 to 19/02. So three papers. If I may start with a few remarks. I think at the last meeting, some members criticized me for handling the procedures poorly. Well, I just want to tell you that since I was taking up this post, I was only assisted by the legal advisor and the secretariat. I could only act in accordance with my understanding of the rules of procedures. I had to be cautious because I knew that the legitimacy of the chairmanship, even if a chairman was elected, would be in doubt, and that would also affect the future procedures. Maybe I was a bit emotional, and some other members also got emotional as well. Well, I reviewed upon what happened, and I can assure you that I will try to keep cool. I will be cool-headed. I will be calm. I hope you understand that I'm merely following the rules of procedures. I will do so at today's meeting. I'm not going to expand my powers, nor would I sort of scale down my powers. I will be presiding over the meeting for the election of the chairman. For the election of the deputy chairman, of course, it's not my business. Probably members across the political spectrum had certain views concerning how I chaired the meeting. So I just want to give you a brief word on that. Well, towards the end of the last meeting, I considered the query of Mr. Lee, but I believe that I did have the power to deal with points of order. If I remember correctly, at the last meeting, Ms. Claudia Mo spoke. If I may give you a minute so that you can talk about the point of order that you were trying to raise. If other members also got points of order, please also do so briefly. Since you started, so I'm giving you a minute's time. No, it's not about that amount of time, that duration. Well, I raised a point of order. You agreed to deal with it, but you didn't. I think it's mainly because Mr. Lee queried as to whether you had the power to deal with the matter. So at the close of the meeting, you were liaising with the legal advisor as well as the secretariat. You had a meeting at another venue while our meeting was suspended. I would be interested to know about the conclusion of that meeting and what is the conclusion now. Are you empowered to deal with the matter? Yes, I can deal with your point of order. And according to my understanding, this was what you were talking about. That is, at the House Committee meeting, for members who were present and who had indicated they wished to join the Bills Committee, Mr. Abraham Sheck was the member of the highest precedence, and then Mr. Sheck, together with the Secretariat, in accordance with the rules of procedure, drew a deadline in relation to the signification of membership from members, and then he decided on the date of the first meeting. Mr. Sheck explained the scenario. It was related to Mr. Lee's query, but I think Mr. Sheck has already told us how he considered the matter and how he came to the decision of the first meeting, as well as the deadline to indicate membership application. Mr. Sheck, I just want to check with you. If you want to speak, just be brief. If you don't think you need to say anything, so be it. Mr. Chairman. Well, I think last time I made myself clear. Everybody was listening to me. I don't think I need to spend time or waste time on going over the point. Thank you. Well, the Secretary General, in the paper that I cited, that is CB Bracket 2 11261, gave an explanation. So what is your point of order? Because the Secretary General told us that Mr. Sheck could fix the date of the first meeting. You might think that it's too rushed, but what is your point? What's the nature of your question? On the 12th of April, it was only on that Friday, then we agreed to set up a Bills Committee. At that time, Mr. Abraham Sheck was the first member to raise his hand. He had the power to make a decision. And then he decided to have the first meeting on the Wednesday morning. It was unexpectedly rushed. Well, we have one clear day before the first meeting to be the deadline for signifying our membership. It's too rushed. Well, in the SG's paper, I think he's really explaining the rules only. He was merely doing that, and he was shifting the blame on Abraham Sheck. I think the last sentence doesn't sound right. He says that the Secretariat provides service to the Legis.Bill in a professional and impartial manner. But the Secretariat remind Mr. Sheck that it's a Wednesday morning and we had a Public Works Subcommittee meeting, and that meeting had to be suspended for quite a long period of time to accommodate us. Did they remind Mr. Sheck? Well, we are given to understand that as long as it is reasonable, we should not try to have clash of meetings. Well, I think I try to sort out the various questions at different levels in your point. I'll give the floor to the member who raised his hand. I think perhaps your point was that it was too rushed. He didn't handle it properly. Is that your point, or are you even querying that as a result of such an arrangement, I should not proceed to the next step, that is election of chairman? What's the nature of your query? Or you simply say that he was not quite good? Well, it's most unfair to the Pt1 meeting. Even the chairman of the Pt1 had to come over here in a rush. Now, I haven't finished. You asked me, so let me finish. Well, as to the second point, I'm not querying the meeting of this Bills Committee. I just wonder if we are going to create a precedent. In other words, when the administration says that it is urgent, the pro-establishment camp agrees that it is urgent, and then we would disregard any clash of meetings, and we give only 2 days for membership application. In the past, we usually gave 6 days or even 12 days. Now we've only got 2 or 3 days, including the weekend. So for this to be set as a precedent, this is most unsatisfactory and unhealthy for the development of the Legis.Bill. Now, so you're merely passing a comment and on the fact that it will become precedent. No, it's a fact. Well, must it be dealt with here? So I have to consider this point. Must we deal with it prior to the election of the chairman of this Bills Committee within this Bills Committee? If you say that it has become a precedent, then it is beyond remedy. Well, last time Ray Chen said that we had the power to raise this point. Basically, you agreed at that time, but then somebody queried whether you had the power. Now it has been found out that you have the power. I don't know why you are not willing to deal with it now. Well, two points I have to clarify with you. I've made myself clear. First of all, you said that it is not satisfactory. Second, at another level, are you querying the legitimacy of my power to deal with it? No, of course I didn't query you. Why are you putting it the other way around? I don't want to repeat everything. I don't want to repeat the same point of order. If you have a similar query like the one raised by Ms. Claudio, please have a show of hands, and then I'll give you the occasion to talk about this point. Why don't you press the button? I don't want to miss out anybody. It will be easier for the Secretariat if you press the button. Fine. Any other members? If not, I draw a line here. 2 minutes each. Mr. Ao-Nok-in. Thank you, Chair. Well, the purpose of having a Bills Committee, if you try to read the relevant information, I think it is very clear. That is, if you turn to page or paragraph 1.2, a Bills Committee is a deliberative forum for studying the policy aspect of the bill under scrutiny, its merits and principles, detailed provisions, and any proposed amendments to it. For us to achieve this objective, we need to give members sufficient time to indicate their wish to be members. On Friday, at a House Comm meeting, we asked members if they were interested to form a Bills Committee. And right after that, we rushed to hold the first meeting. So the period of notice was too short. I think this is most unsatisfactory. What you should have done is as follows. That is, I think the administration should have told us, that is, the administration would like to introduce the fugitive offenders and mutual legal aid in criminal matters amendment legislation. Tell us about the rationale so that political parties in the Legis.Bill would discuss which members would like to join the Bills Committee. And then if you are the spokesman for your political party, you have a particular role to play. If you came too quickly to this step, it would be too rushed. That's the first point. Second point, Mr. Abraham Shek decided, or he picked a date. I think this is questionable. I want to know whether he had consulted the views of different political parties and alliances as to which day will be appropriate, because the Legis.Bill is not just composed of one member only.
I think Ms. Mo's question needs to be dealt with, but I also agree with what you said, that is it so urgent that before we elect a chairman for the Bills Committee that we have to handle it? But here I defer with Ms. Mo. I'm not saying whether the date was appropriate or not. On the last occasion, I was very clear. I said it was breaching the rule of procedures. But because the last meeting has already concluded, whether it was breaching the rules of procedure, that's already in the past. But it doesn't mean that we don't need to deal with it. So even though I don't know when is the or where is the appropriate forum to deal with it and how we should deal with it, but the breach of ROP we should avoid overlapping of meetings, and whether the Secretariat had done their best to advise Mr. Abraham Sheck. That is what I need to investigate. Now, we cannot just have a letter and say that the Secretariat is acting in a fair and neutral way and we don't need to deal with it. The question is whether the Secretariat had done their job, and that might be a breach of ROP itself, because we cannot have two meetings held at the same time. We cannot have an overlapping of meetings. That is impractical. So if we can handle that, it will help our future bills committees. So I cannot stop colleagues from speaking, and I think we should not struggle on this Mo's question forever. And if colleagues agree that I don't want to struggle on this, and I think we still need to resolve this matter. Mr. Kong Junyu, Ms. Mo's proposal of a rule of procedure question, we need to deal with it seriously because we are dealing with a precedent issue. Well, if you can convene a meeting in 3 days, then why don't we make the convening procedure 1 day? So we can have an even shorter period of notice. Doesn't mean that we need to deploy our procedures in such an urgent manner. Now, everything we do and say is recorded, and the meeting on the last occasion had to overlap with the PWSC meeting, and the PWSC had to be suspended to accommodate this meeting. And our question is, do we need such a precedent? In the past bills committees, the most urgent meeting did they have, was it held in such a rushed manner? So do we have sufficient time for our members to handle or understand the work nature of this bills committee? Now, some people say that this was under discussion, but this is our legislative council. If members feel they need more time, then chairman would have to express your you need to rule on this. So convening in 3 days is too much of a rush. It leaves me uncomfortable. And in the past, we might have 6 or 7 days. Now, according to Clause 5, we need to have at least a 3 days notice of the meeting date, and the meeting can also be convened in a shorter period. But does that mean that even though we have this authority, we need to exercise it? And if you respect our views, you should bear in mind, well, the time that we need. Mr. Fernando Chung? Now, I have a slightly different view. I feel this Bills Committee, when it convenes, the decision, first of all, it's stated very clearly in Article Clause 76, subparagraph 5 of the Rules of Procedure. The Bill Committee Chairman can determine the time, location, and date. Now, the decision principles would depend on the urgency of the matter. So, given the background that we have a criminal who might have committed serious murder and be released, I'm not sure what Mr. Abraham considered at that time, and if the bill can be enacted in a timely manner and prevent the criminal from being released, that is in fact an important decision. Now, I don't know what Mr. Abraham Sheck was thinking at the time, but if that was a consideration, that would be an important reason. Now, my analysis of the situation is that the scrutiny of this bill cannot prevent that from happening, but if Mr. Abraham Sheck felt that that was a priority and therefore a meeting needed to be convened as soon as possible, I think that was an important consideration. So given that, I would still hope that in the future our Bills Committee, it has so many members, if it overlaps with other meetings, we should avoid that, especially on the last occasion we overlapped with PWSC. But if it is urgent, we still need to consider that. And even on this occasion, we had to, there was an overlap with another meeting and we had to cancel the meeting. Dr. Kokake, I agree. We have to decide rules of procedure whether that would affect the election of chairman. But I feel we need to deal with the Secretariat and legislators' communication because we all know that Mr. Abraham Sheck is a very experienced, very senior legislator. He should know that there should be sufficient time for members to sign up to a Bills Committee. But on that occasion, there was an overlap with another very important meeting, and it was very unfortunate. Yesterday, I had to deal with two meetings, including the Trade Description 2019 Amendment and also another Bills Committee. On the first occasion, we arranged a date on 7th of May, and then suddenly I received notice that 7th of May was not available. We had to convene a special House Committee. Now, I'm a member of the House Committee, and the way the Secretariat handled that caused concern. We know that the government bulldozes over us, but the Secretariat, we are here to monitor the government, and we should fully scrutinize the work. But I'm not going to second guess what the Secretariat has in mind. If you cannot handle the election of chairman, you might have to convene a special House Committee meeting to elect the chairman. That would be a very dangerous precedent. It means that the Secretariat is hijacking the Legislative Council together with the government. Now, we all know that the purpose of the Secretariat is to help legislators. They are not supposed to collude with the government. This is a very unfortunate incident. Now, I will give the Secretariat a very short period to respond, because if you are alleging something, whether they are colluding with the government, I think they need to clarify. Mr. Jiang Chong-tai. Well, first of all, I think the Bills Committee Chairman has the right to select a time, date, and venue for a meeting. If he doesn't have that authority, then he cannot handle the conflict of interest issue of the Bills Committee. So why do we need the authority to select time, date, and venue? Because it has to be within his authority to elect the chairman and a deputy chairman. But the issue is, when the moderator has this authority, does it mean he can arbitrarily choose any date? It is not just about overlapping of meetings. For example, if the moderator of the meeting chooses to elect chairman on 4th of June, I think more than half of the Pan-Democrats would disagree with that arrangement. So in the past, we would have a moderator who was trusted, and he would be allowed to choose the date and time of meetings. So in the long run, I feel whether it is the Secretariat or the pro-government camp, they will consider times and dates suitable for them. So my comment is that we should not have a third party who to choose, because the Secretariat does not have the authority to handle such controversial meeting dates. So put simply, I don't think the Secretariat has the right to moderate any of our meetings except for the council meeting. Mr. Alvin Young? Now, I agree with Ms. Claudia Mo, she feels that this needs to be handled because this is an important ROP issue. It also goes beyond simple ROP meeting matters. This is directly related to how the LegCo operates. We know, Chairman, this bill is very controversial, and the executive arm had also said that it has interfered. The CE says that this is important. They are pressuring LegCo. So if we allow the ROP to be hanging in the air, then it will give the public the impression that the LegCo and government are colluding, and our image will be tarnished forever. So to ensure LegCo's honor and to instill confidence in the public, we're not even talking about passing this bill. So our role to monitor the government, if we want to regain the public's confidence, we need to handle the ROP issue. Secondly, Chairman, the LegCo Secretariat and the legislators' mutual trust, that might be even more important, because if we don't smooth out the misunderstandings, if we don't resolve it, then in the long run or in the coming few months, at least in this Bills Committee, there will be a lack of trust, and there might be second guessing of hidden agendas on the dates of meetings. So whether we can operate smoothly, that would present obstacles. So I think we need to handle Ms. Claudia Mo's question on the ROP. Mr. Jeremy Tam. Well, the biggest problem is that the issue is in the past. That the decision on the day to convene the meeting has already been convened. We can't go back and say that let's not hold the meeting. But that doesn't mean we feel that it was correct. I don't think we can deal with it. We cannot say that we can scratch the last meeting and say it didn't happen. So this Bills Committee perhaps can have a motion and say that the previous meeting has left some concerns, and we might need to submit it to the House Committee or some other appropriate committee to handle, because we cannot turn back the clock. And as I said just now, we have a consensus, and we should refer to the relevant committees. So we need mutual trust, because even if the meeting was not held on 4th of June, and let's say the Pan Democrats say, let's hold the meeting in the PRD when the pro-government camp is on this tours to the PRD, or when they are out of town. So how we choose meeting dates, we have 62 members. It's not a small Bills Committee. We have a large membership that we should not have overlapping with other meetings. And in last week, we had 3 committees on the same day, all overlapping. It was very chaotic.
Mr. Chairman, I agree that we need to deal with the point of order raised by Claudia Mo. Now, we set up a Bills Committee. We were given short notice to indicate membership, and then it was most undesirable to have a clash of meetings. We don't have to deal with that specific point. And I have to say that this practice would not just affect this particular Bills Committee, it is going to affect the other Bills Committees as well. Now for the pro-establishment camp to take it to the extreme, next time they may have the case of giving us 4 or 6 hours time to indicate membership and then hold a meeting right after the following day. Well, I made this point last time. I believe that some members were not able to join because they missed reading the circular. And then last time we went ahead. If we were to go ahead to elect a chairman, then I'm afraid the legitimacy would be put in doubt. So I don't doubt whether you have the power to conduct the election, but I'm afraid that the chairman, even if elected, may be challenged. So if we continue with our meeting today, we are just extending or maintaining the inappropriateness of the calling of the meeting. So I suggest that you suspend the meeting and then we start afresh, give a week's time or so for members to indicate membership, and then we let everybody sufficient time to consider joining or not. And then as the presiding member, you are duty-bound to rectify the errors committed in the past so that the chairman to be elected in the future will command legitimacy. Mr. Yip Kin Yun, I share some of the views of Fernando Cheung, and in some instances I may not agree with other members. I think you are the presiding member. Now, sorry, for a chairman, if a chairman thinks that it is urgent, then as long as he works within the rules of procedures, etc., then he can come to the decision to call a meeting as soon as possible. At this point, we may have different views, but as long as he acts in accordance with the rules, then we have to respect the decision. Mr. Abraham Sheikh, according to our rules of procedures, had the right to make a decision. However, if we turn to the rules of procedures, then you can see that in some way we haven't been acting in accordance with the rules of procedures, and it deserves a criticism from us, and it would also put the legitimacy of the meeting into doubt. Some members have referred to paragraph 24, providing details concerning when to give notice to call meetings. And we have even got very detailed considerations like holding the meetings at 8:30, etc. And then it has been said that we should try our best to avoid crashing the meetings. Now, we have 10:45 meetings and then 11 o'clock meetings. So we have got a difference of 15 minutes in relation to the starting time. I think that's merely to accommodate the need to have a quorum. This is totally out of step with the rules of with the House rules. So please ask Mr. Abraham Sheikh to see if he has taken note of this point. I think we have made a breach of the rules in 3 areas. First of all, the calling the first meeting, giving 3 days to members to indicate membership. We haven't done this before, not to mention that there was a weekend in between, so we are acting in contravention with the convention. It gives the impression that the Secretariat may be colluding with whoever he is, or say in this case Abraham Sheikh. So much has happened, and so everybody is doubtful as to whether anybody is being sincere in scrutinizing the bill. I think it is also a matter of a breach of trust. Now, we were told that the surrender of fugitives between Hong Kong and another place will be subject to the agreement of the two. Now, China has a very different system of laws. So if we want to have something which is bilateral, as the administration has already said, there would be a very detailed and comprehensive consultation. But that didn't take place. If you try to impose a will on us, you are not going to get anywhere. And then just last Sunday, we have got 130,000 people taking to the street. Where were you, pro-establishment camp members? If you had been there, you better talk to the citizens. They were asking us to urge the government to withdraw the bill, and yet we are here trying to rush to the election of the chairman and try to pass the bill before the July recess. Are we the voice of the people, or do we just come here with our own personal interests and personal motives in mind? I think we need to disband the Bills Committee. We start consultation afresh. I'm sure Regina Yip would share with you her painful experience as to what happened in 03. They tried to force it on us and to no avail. Mr. Edichu, Mr. Chairman, I don't think we want to doubt whether the Secretariat have some private conversation with certain members or with the administration and then come to an arrangement that would favor a particular party or particular side. Well, we have with us a paper from Mr. Kenneth Chen. Please refer to paragraph D. It says, the Secretariat sought Mr. Sheik's view in accordance with HR 21C on the date for calling the first meeting of the Bills Committee. For stop. Mr. Sheik decided that the first meeting of the Bills Committee be held on Wednesday, 17th of April 2019. So, decision, it was decided by Abraham Sheik, but who proposed 17th of April? Well, we haven't got sufficient information regarding this point so as to remove all the doubts in our mind. And then for House Rules 24D, it is said that we should try our best to avoid clashing of meetings. Well, say for example, on a Saturday, we might have 3 public hearings, members will be coming in and out. Maybe we can't avoid it. But in this case, we are having a clash of meetings between the PWC as well as this Bills Committee, having got over 60 members. Now, on the 15th of April at midnight, or at 00 hours, he knew that over 60 members joined the Bills Committee. Why would he still insist on having the meeting on the 17th of April, knowing full well that there would be a direct clash with the meeting of the PWC? Mr. Wu Jiwei. Well, I think the arrangement of the first meeting is unsatisfactory. This is also against the rules. It is said that we should avoid scheduling 2 meetings within the same time slot as far as practicable. But in fact, we have an overlapping of members. So I believe that we should not have allowed the basic principles in the rules to be breached. Mr. To, you are the presiding member. As to your power and your duty, I think that's in relation to the election of the chairman of the Bills Committee. But then, perhaps we should set out more clearly so that in future members will have more to guide them to avoid scheduling 2 meetings within the same time slot as far as practicable. Maybe it's not for you, better for this to be handled by the House Committee or the Committee on Rules of Procedures. That is what is meant by as far as practicable. I think we need a more detailed discussion. So 2 points here. First of all, regarding the timing of a meeting, I don't agree with it at all, but Mr. To, presiding member, I don't think you have the power within this meeting to discuss the relevant arrangements, because that's the power of the House Committee. Well, members, when I started, only members up to Pt1 indicated they wish to speak. 4 more members would like to speak, and in particular, we have a member from the pro-establishment camp raising his hand or indicating his wish to ask questions. I do think he has spoken. For Claudia, I think she would like to speak for the second time. I won't allow her to do so. Sorry, speaker is off mic. Well, I didn't intend to press the button, maybe by mistake. Well, I think the arguments are clear and we're getting repetitions. Mr. Vincent Zhang, is he here? I think he pressed the button earlier on. If he would like to speak, then I think it is right for me to give him the floor. Sorry, I can't hear you. No, he's not here. Well, in this case, I won't give the floor to members like Lam Yu-jung, Gary Fan, etc. Sorry about that. Having heard members, I need to be fair. Mr. Abraham Shack did speak briefly. Now, over a dozen of members elaborated on their arguments. So first of all, I'll give the floor to Mr. Abraham Shack and then the Secretariat. And then I will come to a decision, and then I'll rule on whether we have to pursue with this line of a discussion that is the point of order. First of all, I would like to apologize to the Secretariat. You have been put on the spot. Well, in fact, it's got nothing to do with you. I'm a member and I have to follow the rules when I act. And I made the decision. So please do not criticize the Secretariat. No need to criticize the Secretariat. That's all I want to say. Thank you. Sorry, speaker is off mic. I didn't press the button. Well, it has been sort of cancelled, but it is appearing again. No need to be so worried. It's a matter of a phobia. We can ask. Well, you see some names, Lam Yu-jung, Vincent Zhang, Claudia Mo, Gary Fan. Please delete their names on the list. It is being done. Don't need to worry. It is being done. Give them some time. Don't be so impatient. Well, I think we need to be fair to the Secretariat. Now, Mr. Abraham Shack told us his side of the story, so to speak. And he's taking up all the responsibility. Secretariat, would you like to say something to address the queries of the members? Please switch on the microphone. Testing? Yes. The first point. Just now, some members asked whether there was a precedent. Well, I think long time in the past, there was something similar. So it is not the first time that only 3 days notice was given. Now this is a public meeting. I mean, this is a member criticized the Secretariat in relation to the holding of a House Committee meeting. I think it was yesterday. In response to a media's question, we gave the explanation.
So if it's necessary to hold a special meeting, what time slots can be considered, but unfortunately the Secretariat had some communication problems, and some colleagues thought that a special House Committee meeting needed to be convened on 7th of May, so there was some communication error. But in the practice in the past was that if we convene a special meeting, the chairman would ask the Secretariat to see whether we had a venue first, at the very least, and this is an open meeting, so you need to be fair to the frontline staff of the Secretariat. It is not your speaking turn. So I have heard all colleagues who wish to speak. Hang on. You were referring to a special House Committee meeting, and that is digressing further from our FOO. So both of you have spoken. You can question them in another venue, and as moderator, I cannot allow this discussion. I don't have the authority, and I'll let the Secretary respond to the past occurrences. Well, regarding first convention of first meeting, the Secretariat, when they had issued a short notice, so as our colleague mentioned just now, it dated long ago. It was a Civil Service Pay Amendment Bill Committee, and the deadline, the meeting was convened on 12th of June in 2002, and the first meeting was convened on 7th of June, and notice was given for the first meeting on 12th of June. So who made a proposal? So now, even if Mr. Abraham Sheck is willing to shoulder a responsibility, why can't now? If you wish to conduct an autopsy and who asked what and who said what, well, I think at the end of the day, I need to consider whether I have the authority to deal with it and whether it is necessary to be dealt with it before we elect a chairman, or should even the Bills Committee deal with it. Now, I agree you might want to ask your questions. If you're talking about presidents, I have found one many years ago. Recently, our Bills Committee had been given a lot of time to convene, but ultimately, if Mr. Abraham Sheck, if he decided on a date, I'm not sure if the Secretariat had stopped him and gave him advice that there was a president in 2002. So I need to consider whether we have done a good job, or whether a person has done a good job or not, and whether it will affect the election of chairman, and whether the proceedings are void and not compliant with the procedures. Now, I am looking seriously at Mr. Hui Jifeng and other colleagues' views, such as whether we can reconvene the meeting and play on the safe side regarding membership to the Bill Committee. Now, there are 62 members who have joined the Bills Committee, and the other members who have not joined for whatever reasons, they have their own considerations. And up till now, it's been some 10-20 days, and they have not said the 3 days notice was a big rush, and they forgot, or they were out of town, and so on. I don't think there has been any such notice where they raised that point. Now, in other words, if anybody was prejudiced and negatively affected, I don't see that. So if you want to reconvene a membership meeting and it would affect the voting, well, currently I'm pretty confident that that would not be the case. So I will not, and I also feel that I don't have the authority and it's not necessary to reconvene another membership meeting. So another viewpoint I need to deal with, because I will be the first to bear responsibility. Some colleagues, 62, the Bills Committee meeting overlaps with another PWSC meeting. We have one meeting with 62 members and another meeting with 30 plus members. So would it lead to one meeting being illegal? Well, that doesn't matter because it's already in the past. Because there was no nomination on the last occasion. There was no question about attendance. So I've dealt with that. And on this occasion, we have some 1020 members, and we don't have people who are absent and overlapping with the PWSC that affect the nomination and the seconding and so on. So on this point, I feel even if I continue with the procedure to elect chairman, if I continue, it would not lead to any legal challenges. Now, hang on a minute. That is my view at the moment. Now, let me play safe. I should have let the legal advisor speak first, but I feel my initial points, I think I'm correct, unless the legal advisor stops me and says that is a dangerous position I'm taking. So let's hear from the legal advisor. Thank you, Chairman. Regarding the election of chairman meeting, you're now presiding over this meeting, and regarding the last meeting, he had already stated his position, and there's no need to supplement any. We also have members who had missed the deadline for membership. Well, according to ROP Clause 23, those members who had missed the deadline, as Mr. James Toh explained, up till now, we have not received any applications who missed the membership deadline. So we don't have a factual base to consider this. So let me add on this point. First of all, there have been no late applications, and when I considered presiding over this meeting, if there really were such an application, whether before we elect a chairman, could these 62 colleagues, could they entertain a late application? Because if somebody says that 3 days was too quick, they missed the deadline, but today, it's been some 20 days late after the incident. Well, and but there has been no late application, so I'm very confident that even if there is a late application to join the committee, and even if they were denied, that has not happened. So the 62 members who are members of the Bills Committee, even if they were only given 3 days time, I'm not going to comment on that arrangement. But so I need to continue with the election of chairman. So I will not allow any more ROP questions on this anymore. Now, if you have ROP, I won't allow ROP question regarding to regarding what I on the issue I mentioned just now. Well, I had pressed the button just now. I had 3 concerns, whether it was the Secretariat, Abraham Sheck, and they decided on the date of the first meeting. They should not be just adhering to 21C of ROP, they should also consider 24C, that is within a practical and feasible date. They should avoid overlapping of meetings. So Mr. Abraham Sheck had shouldered responsibility for that. So did the Secretariat remind him? That is my first question. Mr. Fan, allow me to finish. Well, if you want to allow me to finish, Mr. Fan, because we need to consider the legality and the appropriateness of election of chairman and whether the government had acted ultra virus. The chairman, allow me to finish. I had pressed the button and, well, I'm sorry, when you pressed the button, you weren't present. I had already drawn the line. And what you said just now, in fact, has been repeated by colleagues. Well, what I am about to say has not been mentioned. Can you allow me to express that? Well, whether it was a feasible date. We have 62 members in one meeting and 30 plus members in another meeting. Well, whether that was an appropriate arrangement, I'm not going to deal with that. So I am going to talk about whether it will affect election of chairman. Can you allow me to finish? I had dealt with 2 points. I'll allow you to mention a new issue. Because on 25th of April, there was a digital media reporting that the government had suggested that on this Thursday and Saturday, extra meeting being held, and there was an instruction that we have to complete the Bills Committee work in May. Now, this is a new question. So, we have not even elected a chairman and future dates of the meetings. So, has this been ultra-virus decision? So, has the government interfered with the Secretariat's work? Because this will affect our procedures. Mr. Fan, if what you say affects my election work, in other words, if you are questioning me that the government is telling me to elect a chairman as soon as possible, in fact they have already said so, but they have not given instructions that you have to elect a chairman in 1 or 2 hours. Nobody has told me to do that. So could the Secretariat, Mr. Fan, allow me to speak? If the reports you mentioned were between individual legislative members, the government cannot persuade anybody to do anything. But if you're saying if we need to do the work in May, that will be the responsibility of the chairman that will be elected shortly. So you cannot use this as a rule procedure question. I cannot, before the election of a chairman, deal with what happens. Mr. Fan, we were discussing, Mr. Fan, sorry. Mr. Fan, I'm sorry, you need to stop. If you think you can reasonably conjecture that the work has to be concluded in May, well, you can continue to conjecture that, but I cannot question this based on your conjecture. With all due respect to Mr. Abraham Sheck and the Secretary. So if the government really did collude with the Secretariat, I'm not saying they did so, I'm just assuming. So it does not interfere with the legality of the election of chairman unless you have a very detailed point that this will affect the legality and the procedure of election of chairman. Otherwise, I cannot deal with that. This is a political, whether the LegCo is independent and whether it is monitoring the government. This is a political stance. We'll deal with it, but it's not what I can handle. Mr. Kong Junyu.
What is your point of order? Mr. Chairman, I would like to make an inquiry. Well, on the 17th of April, we were issued with a LegCo members brief. Explanation was given about the arrangements, and Mr. Sheck was included under the list of members yet to have their attendance confirmed. I think we're supposed to have Mr. Sheck making the decision to pick that date for the first meeting. So I wonder if there was any mistake in that paper because his attendance wasn't confirmed on that day. Yes, it appears that he was not sure as to whether he could attend. But I don't think the doubt could be established because he did attend the meeting on that day. Well, for him to fix a date that he might not be able to make it, would it be against the rules of procedure or his absence? And I couldn't make it, and Mr. Liang Youzhong couldn't make it. But I don't think that nobody could turn up. Somehow, somebody could preside at the meeting. So for your question, first of all, it is a thing of the past. First of all, Abraham Sheck was able to make it. And then as to whether such a decision was against the law, I think this is too academic. Please consult somebody who is well-versed in that and write your own thesis. So I don't think it is a point of order. Who else? Ray Chen, presiding member. You had a debate with Roy Kwong, and you come to your ruling. I respect your ruling. Last time, you adjourned the meeting, saying that if a member would like to have a judicial review of your decision, you would like to know whether you had to dip into your own pocket or whether the bill would be paid by the Secretariat. If somebody queried the legitimacy of your status as the presiding member, you adjourned the meeting and you didn't give an account of this matter. Well, I'm the presiding member. I have to bear some risk. Of course, there are certain things that I very much want to know. However, at the same time, I can't consult the Secretariat each and every time to ask them whether they're going to support the presiding member. I thought you adjourned the meeting over this matter. I had to find out from them whether I could continue to preside over the meeting to deal with points of order. Did you pick up that point? No. And they were not in the position, they didn't have the power to answer that question for me. Well, let me say on behalf of the Secretariat, listen to me. Just now, some members asked, at the time, Mr. Abraham Sheck decided on the date of the meeting for 62 members. Did he know that there was a clash with the Pt1 meeting? Well, for CB bracket 21261 for that paper, and please turn to the 4th paragraph. I think it has been written down there. In deciding on the date and time of the first meeting of the Bills Committee, Mr. Sheck was aware that a meeting of the Pt1 had been scheduled to be held at 8:30 a.m. on that day, so part of the question has been answered. Mr. Eddie Chu also asked for further details that is who made the proposal. I will leave it with you. I'm not going to handle that part. To be fair, since this is already contained in the paper, so I would like to draw attention to that point. Fernando Zhang, point of order, indeed. ROP 676, which paragraph? 76 bracket 5. Just a moment, please. We were all the time talking about our last meeting, but I'm more interested in the future meetings. Well, on this point, I would suggest that you suspend the meeting or adjourn the meeting and postpone it by 1 week's time. This is because over 100,000 people took to the street in the march last Sunday. Now, this is the topmost organization representing the voice of the people. So over 100,000 people took to the street to object to this bill, which we are about to scrutinize. Now we are about to elect a chairman. As soon as we enter the process or embark on the process of election of chairman, then we will be embarking on the legislative process on the basis of this bill as published. In other words, it is almost a question of reaching the point of no return. Yesterday, the CE, upon disembarking from the plane, she came back with 3 points. First of all, the relevant suspect might be released from jail as early as October. Second, yes, there might still be some time, but the CE was of the view that the Bills Committee couldn't wait, and we had to complete our work as soon as possible. Thirdly, the CE said that she would deal with our proposals seriously, and in particular those that could sort of resolve certain sort of differences of views. So the CE has promised to take our views seriously, and she would consider proposals that would address the conflict of views. You have the power to decide on when to have a meeting. Why don't you adjourn the meeting so that the executive will be given ample opportunities to consider the different proposals from members? Fernando Jiang, your point is clear. So, briefly speaking, you are saying that I have got the power to adjourn the meeting so as to allow the administration to respond to members' proposals or to reconsider the matter. First of all, I have to decide whether I've got the power. Second, is it right for me to exercise such a power? For the time being, that's what I think. Let me deal with your point immediately on the spot. Now, you said that the CE said that she would consider members' views. If we don't adjourn it by a week, then the bill as it stands will go ahead. My understanding is that the administration can withdraw the bill at any moment. The administration can suspend the matter and liaise with the chairman to be elected as to the way forward. Of course, the legislature has to consider the perception of independence, of being independent. Now, of course, there's a pressure to say that we have to be quick, but administration can also say that you need to elect the chairman at the first meeting. Now, first of all, let me set aside whether I've got the power. I am a bit doubtful as to whether I have the power to adjourn the meeting by a week's time, unless your argument relates to the doubt as to whether the following procedure will be regarded as invalid. I don't think I have the right to adjourn the meeting by a week's time or to postpone the meeting by a week's time just to allow the admin to consider members' proposals. Chair, as to what you said, I think you have clearly illustrated that you are in a position to expedite the pace or you can slow down the pace. No, what do you mean by slowing down the pace? I have to work towards the goal that is in a lawful and way and in line with the procedures. I should, as soon as possible, help to elect the chairman. Well, if the administration would like to slow down the pace, In fact, the Bills Committee can and have the power to tie in with the approach of the administration. Well, I'm the presiding member to elect the chairman. I don't think I've got the power to do what you referred to. But then for the chair to be elected, he can, after discussion with members and having listened to the administration, may choose to slow down the pace. Say, for example, today we may be able to elect a chairman. He may then say that let's have the first meeting in 3 weeks' time. This is particularly easy to do if this is in response to the admin's request. Say if the administration says that we have other factors to consider or the government would like to take another view of its legal position. This can be done. But then I'm just the presiding member to elect the chairman. I don't think I've got such powers. Well, we're responding to the people's aspirations. We are accountable to the people. I would like to seek some clarification. The legal advisor can also confirm this point. Now, you are the presiding member, Mr. To. I think you have the power to, or the right to fix the meeting date and the venue. So indeed, you have the right, you have the power to decide on the meeting time. Legal advisor can confirm. Legal advisor, please. Yes, if I may provide some information to you. I think members know that we have already fixed today's meeting details. For the first item on the agenda, election of chairman. Let me take this opportunity to quote from a paper issued to members in 2016. It was also issued to you at the last meeting. For your reference, CB bracket 3, 25/16 to 17. And then in paragraph 9, and that's about the powers of the presiding member. Let me cite from the relevant paragraph. When presiding at the election, the presiding member should have such powers as may be reasonably necessary for him to perform his role and function of presiding at the election. Such powers include maintaining the order of the proceedings on the election and taking necessary action to ensure that the election be conducted in an orderly manner. In exercising the power, the presiding member may, where the situation warrants, order the removal of any member whose conduct is grossly disorderly or suspend the meeting for the purpose of restoring order. Such reasonably necessary powers should not include the power to adjourn the election, as the whole purpose of the election is to elect the president. So, members, please consider the facts. And then you can understand whether the power is within the reasonably necessary powers. No, I'm not asking you to adjourn the election. I'm merely asking you to suspend the meeting. When we resume the meeting, we will continue with the election. Of course, there's the view of Kenneth Chen, the SG of the legislature. I can form my own opinion, that is, having made reference to his view, and then decide whether I've got the power. If I don't think that I have the power, but they insist that we have the power, and if I'm taken to court, then there will be a problem. Of course, they consider matters of a wider scope. Now, if you say that I've got the power to adjourn the meeting, and now you say that I'm merely suspending the meeting instead of terminating or adjourning the election. Adjourning the election could mean adjourning it permanently. I can suspend the meeting because of a disorderly manner or conduct, and then I can resume the meeting. If I suspend the meeting not because of the order of the proceedings, or it's because of power outage, or God forbid there's a fire. If those are not the if we haven't got such scenarios, how can I adjourn the meeting so as to address a political aspiration? My understanding is that even if the administration writes to us and asks the presiding member to adjourn the election by a week, I don't think I have the power to accede to the administration's request.
I would respond you should allow the elected chairman to suspend the scrutiny work. But I think I do not have that authority. I don't think I have that discretion. Chairman, real ROP issue. In the 76.5 of the House ROP, House Committee ROP being mentioned right now. Now, as the Democratic camp, we do have a political stance because 130,000 people took to the streets and they had called for a repeal of this legislation. So now I have a question. In clause 76.5, it says that the Bills Committee shall meet at the time and place determined by the chairman. It says the Bills Committee chairman. So I want to clarify with the legal advisor. This chairman, can you state that it is not our moderator, Mr. James Toh, so he cannot postpone the meeting? We're not asking for adjournment. We're just saying that you need to postpone for a week. Now, is that a breach of the law? I would like to hear from legal advisor what his position is. Is it that the moderator, Mr. James Toh, cannot respond to a political request and postpone our meeting till next week? Well, legal advisor? Well, let me present some factual information. Now, today's meeting has been determined and convened by Mr. James Toh. The relevant paper is CB2, and it was issued on 18th of April, and it was determined that we would hold the meeting today. So as I said just now, the agenda item, you can see the first item is to elect a chairman. So I mentioned the secretariat papers, the powers of the members are described, and I had already stated the principles. I will not repeat them. So as a moderator, Mr. James Toh, who is in charge of electing for chairman, he will make a decision on whether he has the power to handle your request. Well, so I want to ask the legal advisor. You should be advising the moderator, and we now have a request to postpone the meeting in light of political considerations. So how would you advise the moderator? Well, political aspirations, he won't be giving advice on that. He's neutral. I'm not asking does he have a legal basis for now he has read out Mr. Tan Wai On's response. So put simply, if we postpone a week, is that an adjournment? Okay, since you want to be so blunt about it. So as I said just now, I will not be repeating the relevant legal principles. So when Mr. James Toh decides on handling a member's questions, he has to consider that whether he has the power to do so. And it seems that he's asking you, he's asking Miss Claudia Mo is asking you for your legal advice. Well, of course, Mr. Kenneth Chen, the clerk to the Legislative Council, I think he has studied the question, and he said that it should not include the right to adjourn the election of chairman, and it's not because of misconduct, of disorderly conduct, and suspending the meeting for a purpose of restoring order. So such reasonable necessary powers should not include the power to adjourn the election. Well, if we don't elect the chairman, then it means we can't continue. So we would have to defer to the House committee. So if we adjourn the election and if we postpone it a week, is that an adjournment? So when we say, let me ask on behalf then. So if we adjourn, is it a permanent adjournment? So I repeat, today's agenda is to handle election of chairman. And when we moderate the election of chairman, and the member has to decide on how he should exercise his power, the secretariat nor the legal advisor can give advice. But of course, I have my role to play to provide legal advice to legislators, and I already stated the principles just now. So in practice, if the moderator can, in the current circumstances, postpone the election of chairman, does he have a basis in today's meeting when the agenda states that we have to elect a chairman? Can the moderator postpone? We have to consider whether there were circumstances during the meeting that led to a postponement. So as Mr. James said, if we have misconduct or we need to restore order, we cannot conduct the meeting. The principle is that if the moderator of the election, his responsibility, according to ROP, is to conduct the election of chairman. So the secretariat paper stated that it should not include the power to adjourn the election because the agenda requires us to elect a chairman. So do we have a reasonable case to postpone the election? So the moderator needs to consider all the factors before making a decision. So I will give you a last opportunity. Now, I feel I don't have this power to... Well, of course, you say, Mr. Kenneth Chen says that if we need to adjourn because of disorder and so on, I don't think but if colleagues have, if they want to make a last attempt to ask me to make, to ask me to reconsider, so you should not rely on political aspirations or political requests. You cannot convince me. But if you do see a legal basis for me to adjourn, and even if I agree, will I adjourn? If I feel I have no authority, I will not adjourn. So do we have colleagues who think that you have a legal basis and they wish to convince me? But if you rely on political requests or how many people took to the streets and so on, I will not allow you I will not allow that consideration. So you can press your speaking button, Mr. Abraham Sheck. We are attending the meeting according to ROP to elect a chairman. We have the agenda. We have been speaking till 10 after 12. I would like you to exercise your authority according to agenda item number 1 to elect a chairman. We are proceeding in that direction. I will be strict. If you have I will allow legal analysis, otherwise I will not allow political considerations or policy considerations. So we've pressed the speaking button. So the pro-establishment, if you feel I have no authority, you can also provide your analysis. If you think my analysis is correct, you can choose not to speak. Okay? we have 12 members. So if it is not a legal analysis on whether I have authority to adjourn, I will not allow it. It will appear. Mr. He Jifeng. And we're not discussing politics. Now, Miss Claudia Mo, when she talked about ROP, such a short notice to establish a bill committee, that was questionable. Now, I had also referred to this under these rushed conditions, members would not be able to meet the deadline. That was already decided. So this is a legal reason why you should adjourn. This is the legal reason. Your summary was that you didn't see people making a late application. The secretary didn't say there was a late application. But I want to ask, if because of this summary you had elected a chairman and then tomorrow somebody says that it wasn't orderly, was the procedure legal, the elected person, if they were prejudiced, they didn't have sufficient votes, you would be legally challenged. That has been resolved. The risk is very small. I won't say it's non-existent, but I'm willing to bear the responsibility. Second, we did not clarify. You did not allow questions. The Secretariat and Mr. Abraham Shek, Mr. He Jifeng, if you have objections, if you think an adjournment of a meeting, you need to hear me out. So the communication between the Secretariat and Mr. Abraham Shek, if there was a procedural error, and if the person elected today is not legal, then you should adjourn. You should allow us to. Yes, I've heard your viewpoint, Mr. Jiang Chongtai. Thank you, moderator. Why did I submit a letter regarding a chairman and deputy chairman non-conflict of interest? It's because it is relevant to the legality of the chairman. 83A and 84. I might need a little bit more time to explain this. So pecuniary interest is clause 84. We have direct and indirect pecuniary interests. So these two clauses are about Mr. Cheng. This is something I need to deal with when we elect chairman. No, I have conflict of interest, not when we have a candidate. So 83A and clause 84 regulates the election and before the election of chairman, whether they need to disclose pecuniary interest or conflict of interest. Are you questioning I have pecuniary interest and I'm not eligible to moderate the meeting? If you're talking about the latter, it is not relevant. Unless you're questioning me. It is relevant. Allow me to finish. So we have a lot of legislators with legal qualifications, and some of us are even practicing lawyers. So practicing lawyers, if the FOO is endorsed, they have interest. For example, practicing lawyers, they can provide legal opinion, they can go to court. Now, whether that is related to my authority to adjourn the meeting, so any legislator who intends to run for chairman or deputy chairman, now if their personal qualifications, if they are solicitors or barristers, then they might have a conflict of interest. To give you an example, Chairman, the ordinance, you might, let's say, you might be a marriage counselor or estate advisor. If the law is endorsed, you might become a fugitive offender expert. So it will give people the impression that their independence when they moderate the meeting. You need to stop. I am aware of your viewpoint. Your other colleagues are aware.
Yes, I know. Well, this is a very serious challenge. So now I find that your paper or your letter isn't confined to candidates for the post, and I've yet to decide whether I'm going to run for the post. Now, in your letter, you wonder whether a person can conduct the meeting or preside over the meeting in a fair manner, because you covered the presiding member as well, and perhaps I have to let Mr. Leung Yu-jung be the presiding member in a moment. Dr. K.K. Kwok. Well, I don't think you alone should bear the responsibility if your power to preside over the meeting is cast in doubt. Now, there is a clear voice from the people, that is, the administration should reconsider the position and whether the bill should be withdrawn. In fact, some pro-establishment camp members have also said that the administration needs more time to consider the matter. The government shouldn't impose it on us. Now, assuming for the time being that the majority of us who are at present ask you to adjourn the election so as to allow the administration to have the opportunity to reconsider its position. Well, in this case, it is a sort of collective decision, and we are not adjourning the election permanently. We are simply postponing it. Is it possible if the majority of us come to such a view? Sorry, just a moment. Dr. Jiang Chongtai, I have to be very careful when I handle your point. Just now you raised a query, and that covers me as well. In fact, it could, because for a solicitor or barrister, upon enactment of this bill, then it will become a new area of law, and then it can become part of your expertise of your practice. If you talk about barristers and solicitors, I think we can all become experts in the scrutiny of this bill. Do you, in fact, query my position? That is, are you saying that I'm the presiding member? Are you saying that I may be biased so that I facilitate the election of a particular member so that he can favor the fugitives? If you have such a query, then I have to think carefully. Well, to be frank, I didn't act on behalf of only fugitives in the past, and in particular, I haven't got cases covering the celebrities. I'm not that smart. I'm not eligible to act on their behalf. Well, what is the point? Well, according to the current arrangements, certain items of offences will be taken out. I think the amount of money involved, the interest involved, is huge. Just a moment, please. Let me have a word with the legal advisor. Dr. Jiang Chongtai, I'm not blaming you, it doesn't matter, but for you to raise this question, I have to be very careful. If things reach a particular stage, if I continue to preside over the meeting and this may lead to the sort of collapse of the meeting, then I will become a sinful person. Well, I had a word with the legal advisor. He said to have a proper consideration of the matter, it's better for us to have a closed-door meeting. I can tell you that I'm not representing any celebrities. He said that he couldn't sort of deal with the matter in a few words. We have to start. Just a minute, please. Well, it's not a matter of your perception. It is a matter of the legal position. That is, whether I can continue with presiding over the meeting. Just a minute, please. The legal advisor says that to play safe. In fact, he is being very cautious. So I will suspend the meeting. Sorry. Conflict of interest is the most acute question. No, I'm sorry. He queries me. Even if you say that I don't have conflict of interest, I can't help. I can't say that I agree with you and then I say immediately whether I have or I haven't got conflict of interest. Let me have the advice of the legal advisor first. Then I'll come out and I'll come to a decision. If I think I can continue, I will do so. If not, then I will share the findings or the outcome of my discussion with the legal advisor, and then we have to get somebody else to be the presiding member. So let's have a break of 15 minutes. 15 minutes, please.